On Easter Saturday, Éirígí and the 1916 societies held a commemoration in Arbor Hill to honour the leaders of 1916. On Easter Saturday, Fronta Poblachta held a commemoration to honour the leaders of 1916. On Easter Sunday, the Irish state held a ceremony at the GPO to honour the legacy of 1916. On Easter Sunday, Anti-Imperialist Action held a parade at Glasnevin Cemetery to honour the legacy of 1916. On Easter Monday, independent Dublin Republicans held a march to the GPO to honour the legacy of 1916. On Easter Monday, Republican Sinn Féin held a march to the GPO to honour the legacy of 1916.
It's very important for Irish Republicans every year to come out and commemorate. In 1916, obviously the torch was lit that led to the Tan War, and that led to the creation of the Free State and partition. So we come here to reaffirm our commitment to the Irish Republic that was declared in 1916, and vow to end partition and reunite our country and reunite our people.
Today's ceremony is commemorating the men of 1916, and the anniversary of it. We're just an unofficial. You'll have the state version down O'Connell Street, but we don't participate in that. And then you'll have the other, what we would call the sinners, which are known as Sinn Féin, who have basically sold out now and are basically just upholding British rule in the north.
They were brave, noble, selfless and courageous people with courageous ideals. They still remain so today. We in Éirígí and in the 1916 societies share that same vision and those same ideals.
Éirígí is just they're basically the same, but they're just more intellectual, They don't have the numbers, but their thinking is right. Their philosophy is sound,
We oppose a border poll because it denies the right of the Irish people to self-determination. In a border poll, only the people in the 6 counties will get the vote. Now, there may be a simultaneous vote here in the 26 counties, but it can only uphold whatever decision is made in the north. So basically, we in the 1916 societies, we're a one Ireland, one vote campaign. We want every single man and woman on this island to have the opportunity to vote to end partition and to end British rule in Ireland.
And finally, comrades, before we leave this hallowed place today, where the executed leaders of 1916 rest, let us each recommit ourselves to pursue their visionary and far-sighted ideals and ambitions. To do otherwise, to just play lip service would be a major act of betrayal on the part of everyone gathered here.
The only oath I ever took was to the army. I took that in 1973, and in 1974 I was arrested in England for 3 counts of conspiracy to cause explosions, and I got 20 years apiece on them, 3 20s, and I was given a 14 for possession. I had my 21st birthday in Brixton prison, and I got out when I was 36.
The government in Leinster House certainly have not lived up to the legacy of 1916. We have a very wealthy country at the moment, but that wealth is concentrated in a very small cohort of people. The vast majority of people are struggling. There's the fuel crisis caused by the war in Iran is affecting ordinary people. The government have done a minimum to help these people. We have a housing crisis where they claim we're one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet most young people cannot afford their own home.
I would support the armed struggle, but I know it's not the thing. It's not appropriate at the present. Well, all I would say is, the armed struggle, I would say, you're going to get nothing through democracy. The vote is going to get you nowhere because they're giving you the vote. It has to be civil unrest. It has to be the people on the streets, and that's where Sinn Féin lost out. They called the people onto the streets in the beginning with a campaign against drugs, and that built their base vote in Dublin and in the south. And then they fell away from that during the water charges, which is the next big thing. They went with the state basically accepting them when they seen the amount of people coming on the streets, and then they joined in. So they're not leading the people anymore. They're going in and making lovely speeches in the dial, and it's grand, but it's going to get nobody anywhere. They're just going to listen to it and that's carry on as normal. But once you start using the language of the state, you become part of it. So if you don't stay radical, where's the radicalism now in Sinn Féin? There is none. They went after the middle class voters. They called broadening the base of the vote and basically just sold out. That's the way I see it. Yeah, no.
As the commemoration ended, another group arrived for their own event, so I decided to stick around and see who they were. The commemoration was somewhat disrupted by the heavy winds, and the lack of a microphone meant their speeches were almost inaudible.
The architects of the proclamation had no qualms about invoking the Irish race, and neither should we. It serves well to remember the fact that those who authored the proclamation believed that the Irish were indeed a distinct race, and that they endeavoured towards our preservation as the dominant ethnic, political, social and cultural force on this island.
So we're Fronta Poblachta, the Republican Front, and we are an Irish Republican organisation committed to carrying through what was started by the signatories of the 1916 proclamation. We are committed to building a republic, the ideals of which is enshrined in the 1916 proclamation and later the democratic programme of the First Ireland.
The Anglo-Saxons who once created caricatures of the Irish, specifically targeting racial characteristics, they ascribe to us. Today conspire to deny that such an ethnicity or race exists at all. The organs of the state, which have acted always to diminish any prospect for freedom in Ireland, seek again to convince the children of the nation that we are mongrels.
Most Republican groups vary on various strands. They'd have various differences. So, for example, we are not in favour of the Good Friday Agreement, and that would be one of our core tenets.
Before I could learn more, their leader ended the interview saying he needed to use the toilet.
It needs to be made by the people of the whole 32 counties and not by one segment or another thereof. I'm going to have to cut this short.
However, instead of leaving, he stood around with other participants, and when I tried to ask him questions, he told me that wasn't allowed. On Easter Sunday, the Irish Defence Forces with President Catherine Connolly and Taoiseach Micheál Martin held the official state ceremony at the GPO. Unlike at the other events, the large crowd size meant I had to view proceedings from a distance. Shortly afterwards, Anti-Imperialist Action held their own march to the Citizen Army plot in Glasnevin Cemetery. The parade had a wide range of flags such as Anti-Imperialist Action, the Irish Citizen Army, Hezbollah, Coming Amon but with an assault rifle, the medieval Kingdom of Navarre but communist, Anti-Imperialist Front, a different Anti-Imperialist Front, the Viterbo Committee of Struggle. Viterbo is a city in Italy with about the population of Waterford City, Basque but communist, Catalan but socialist, a trans pride flag and starry plough with pink triangles, a blank red flag, Freedom for Palestine. This looks like the Soviet flag but with a plough instead of a sickle, the Communist Party of Ireland, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin and Mao with Chinese writing, a European socialist group affiliated with a Turkish Communist Party, the Union of Cypriots, and finally a contingent from the German Communist Youth.
We're a socialist Republican mass organisation, and we are trying to pick up the pieces of the Republican movement that has been broken apart since 1916 by continual sellouts and traitors. The fact that so many people have turned up from methods speaks to the vibrancy and to the dedication of our struggle. There is still much work to be done for the legacy of 1916. Principally, our country remains occupied. The 6 counties need to be taken back. The work that was started in 1916 remains to be done. We in Anti-Imperialist Action take that as our duty. Since our inception, we have campaigned across many issues relating to the occupation and imperialism in our country. This takes the form of British occupation in the 6 counties and the domination of the 26 by US, EU and British imperialism also.
Because we can rightly take it as the modern start and inspiration for our fight that continued with the new rounds of the revolutionary armed struggle breaking out in 1919, 1922, 1939, 1956 and 1969. And despite what British imperialism and the Free State traitors and the former Republican quislings who administer British rule today would tell you, that struggle continues. Since the introduction of the new British Treaty in 1998 and the betrayal of the Republic by the former Republican leadership, republicanism has been in a bad place. British rule has been strengthened. A colonial administration has returned at Stormont with Sinn Féin as the chief administrators of British rule. Republicanism is fractured and divided, with many genuine Republicans seeing the issues in the wider movement, retreating into their own areas to isolation. Commemorations and stories of the past, when what's needed is the exact opposite. A giant has gone to sleep, but that giant now needs to wake up. Onwards to the victory. Victory to the resistance. Bear Bua. Chucky Allah.
As I was leaving the cemetery, another Republican group with their own parade came marching down the road.
Well, all political parties would say that they're, in a certain way, the inheritors of 1916. The modern Irish state is but we've got to remember that while we have the Irish state, we would differentiate between the nation and the state. That the Irish state represents the 26 counties, whereas the themes, the beliefs, and the process of 1916 was for an All-Ireland Republic. The position of the independent Dublin Republicans, we've decided that we're not going to go down the normal route of political party. There's plenty of options out there, from what people would call the extreme right to the extreme left. So there's plenty of opportunities for people. If they want to engage in particular campaigns, that's up to them, their personal. But we stick to a pretty strict formula. We have had some campaigns. We've opposed extradition of Irish Republicans, but we remain focused on the Irish national the sovereignty question.
Today's event is all about remembering the people from 1916, our brave heroes that fought against the British in 1916. Well, the British are still in Ireland as such, you know, they're in the north of Ireland. So I think it's important that we do this every year to remember. Because if we don't remember them, who's going to remember them, you know?
I think the people involved here would say that the principles and ideals of the men and women who fought in 1916 should still be foremost in our minds and aren't reflected in government policy or in public discourse in Ireland at all very much. Well, the reason I prefer this one is that it's independent groups. It's not run by any political party. A lot of people here are community activists. They'd be involved in maybe other stuff like, you know, campaigns in the community.
There was a banner across the front of the building at that time which said, "We serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland." And really, it's probably a banner that should be back up there again, because 110 years later, we see the Free State government wanting to ally themselves with the kings and the Kaisers and the imperial powers of Europe and the world. And that flies against everything that the people who fought in 1916 were fighting for. That republic has not been delivered. It's not delivered as long as there's troops occupying the 6 counties, and it's certainly not going to be delivered as long as we see the poverty, the homelessness, etc., inequality in the country. James Connolly didn't fight and die, so his statue could be over there with people living in tents and sleeping in sleep bags beside him.
The parade stopped on Gardiner Street outside the home of Molly O'Reilly, who raised a green flag over Liberty Hall in 1916. The parade next stopped on Talbot Street outside the building where IRA leader Sean Tracy was killed in 1920. The building is now a cafe and massage parlour. The parade continued on to the GPO before finishing at Moore Street outside the building where the rebels surrendered in 1916. Before the parade had even finished, Republican Sinn Féin held their own parade from the Garden of Remembrance to the GPO.
Today's event is about commemorating the 110th anniversary of the 1916 Rising. It was the proclamation of the Irish Republic for all 32 counties. It was a strike after several other strikes before against British imperialism and British rule in Ireland. And we remember it because the job of 1916 is still unfinished, that 32 County Irish Republic is not a living entity as such yet, but it lives in our hearts, and we intend to carry on with our allegiance to it and serve it. We are the traditional Republicans. We hold on to the traditional Republican viewpoint, and it would be the 3 rules that there must be a declaration of intent for the British to withdraw. There must be the release of all political prisoners, and then the democratic right of the Irish people to elect their own 32 county government. That would be the basic principles. Is our official policy. We don't recognise the legitimacy of the 26 county government.
Why not?
Well, because in the treaty, when we refer to the Treaty of Surrender, it was passed under duress, first of all. The British government basically says, accept or we will destroy you through force of arms.
When Patrick Pearse proclaimed a sovereign independent state, the steps of the GPO 110 years ago, he proclaimed a 32 county Ireland, not a 6 county, not a 26 county British statelet, and a 6 county statelet in the north of Ireland, still governed by the British establishment. Mainstream Sinn Féin, Mary Lou's party, Jerry Adams' party, they uphold British rule in Ireland and we oppose it. That's the differences.
It's as simple as that.
It's very simple. They uphold British rule when members of in a 6 county British statelet in Stormont and the 26 county Free State administration here in Leinster House. Nothing will ever come out of it.
The nature of resistance is changing, and the movement forges new ways to deal with the Imperial English partition of our country and the continued occupation. Their counter-revolutionary tactics and strategies are evolving, and we must evolve our tactics and strategies to thwart their efforts to capture our country. This movement is dedicated to the cause of Irish freedom. Towards this outcome, the Republican movement shall continue to stand to and strike at any time against the occupiers and their hirelings in Ireland. Issued by the leadership of the Republican movement, Easter 2026.
In the occupied 6 counties, nothing has changed. Britain's blueprint to control Ireland is continuing to secure active participation of the provisionals. Even with the betrayal of the last few hundred years, it is still stomach-crunching that a so-called First Minister sits down with the King of England, the Commander-in-Chief of the Parachute Regiment. And in the 26 counties, our former comrades have become more and more embroiled in constitutional politics. Our message remains the same. A new Ireland will never evolve out of Stormont or Leinster House. Republican Sinn Féin calls for the complete withdrawal of the British government and all its operatives from Ireland, leaving the people of Ireland acting as a unit to be allowed to decide on their own future of their country. The only fitting tribute we can pay the men and women of 1916 is to continue the struggle. There are men and women who are prepared to take the fight both politically and militarily to the enemy. We salute their courage for an all-Ireland 32-county sovereign republic. We in Republican Sinn Féin promise to continue the continuity of Irish republicanism on to a new generation. Our determination is steadfast. We are unbroken, undefeated. We have unfinished business.
These were only the commemorations by dissident Republicans in Dublin. Other groups held events in Derry and Belfast. All were certain that they were the true inheritors of the legacy of 1916.
Irish men, Irish women.
In the name of God and of the dead generations,
from which she receives her old tradition of nationhood.
Ireland, through us,
summons her children to her flag and strikes for her freedom.